So welcome to our final leg of our working group tour, and some might say saving the best for last, because today we are hosting the working group on anti-poverty. So this has been the stalwart, really, of the prime global working groups, and it's going to be a pleasure to hear from the working group leads who are here, Al Rosenblum and Milenko Gudik, and also to be joined by Professor Carol Parks, who's representing the UK and Ireland aspect of the working group. And we do also have Meredith Story of Prime Global with us today, who we hadn't discussed this previously, in fact, in terms of the running order as to if you wanted to speak first, Meredith, or Al. I will leave that to you as I pass over to you, and if each speaker introduces themselves and talks about your career context, and please don't hold back. We want to hear about all of your many achievements. Over to you.
Okay. How about if we just go into the presentation? So as Karen said, three of us will be sharing our presentation today. Al Rosenblum. I am Professor Emeritus at Dominican University, and I have an interest in international business marketing, but also the role that management education can play in developing students in areas around the world that are emerging or in transition. So my teaching career has always been at values-based institutions in the United States, and I found that to be really fantastic because it puts the institutional environment and my own personal goals and values in alignment. The interest, as you will hear in a minute, of how the working group got formed actually is an outgrowth of a Fulbright scholarship that I had in 2001 in Nepal. And that led to a sequence of events, which I call the working group origin story, okay? In 2005, I was attending a meeting in Brno where Milenko was also in attendance. At that time, we had we still do, our shared interest was around individual student case writing and faculty case writing. Milenko was the program director for IMTA, the International Managers Teachings Academy, and he and I developed a really fantastic relationship right from the beginning. And in about 2008, I went to Belgrade to talk to him about some projects we were working on. And just as it was, just as it can happen where you have an idea and you put it on a napkin, I said to him, hey, would you like to do some first of its kind research around poverty? Knowing Milenko as the individual that he is, he said, absolutely. And that led to the first, in 2008, Siemens-sponsored survey into the relationship of poverty and management education. It was a great survey, and there were two core findings. The faculty that responded said, yes, poverty is relevant to management education, but also equally important, poverty is a moral and ethical challenge, and it's underrepresented in the management curriculum. That then led to that Siemens research being presented at the very first Prime Global Forum in New York in 2008. Emmanuel Escudero was head of the Prime Secretariat then, and was really engaged. I wrote, impressed with our presentation. So out of that, he asked myself and Milenko if we would like to develop the first Prime working group, Poverty, a Challenge to Management Education. And as they say, the rest is history. So our mission is really pretty straightforward. We see our roles as educators, of course, but also as advocates to work with business and management education, educators, researchers, and other professionals to integrate the issue of poverty into the business curriculum, to create opportunities for multi-stakeholder discussion, to foster discussions that lead to tangible results, and in our role as scholars, to facilitate a global repository for innovative curriculum approaches and learning methods that will integrate poverty into business and management education. That very last item will be really evident as our discussion and presentation unfolds. So our approach to the topic of poverty is really multidimensional, which includes the very origins of this in economics with absolute and relative poverty, but also includes the issue of inequality and vulnerability, and also challenges poverty as a challenge to global prosperity. One of the things that this perspective does for us and for Prime and for our members is it reimagines or broadens the scope of the issue of poverty as a human development issue, not just simply an economic issue. And so that's evident in this little network diagram of the relationship between SDG 1, no poverty, and many, if not all, of the other SDGs. So poverty is connected with so many human development and sustainable development goals, period. And that is also reflected in our membership. So currently we have 230 members from 193 different institutions in 63 different countries. As you can imagine, because it's Prime, many of our members teach in management disciplines, but because of our broad scope and of viewing poverty, we have members who are political scientists, social anthropologists, development studies, and individuals that talk about international relations through global organizations. So as is evident there, our approach to our work is clearly within the working group, between other Prime working groups and regional chapters, and other responsible management education stakeholders in the broader ecosystems. And truly, we have members, as you saw, all around the world. So our methods really are an expression of that mission and our desire to be a grassroots, member-driven, ground-up, collaborative partner between our members, other organizations, Prime, and everyone who comes together around the issue of poverty, inequality, prosperity, and vulnerability. So this really summarizes that really, broad view of who our members are and how we work. And it really, I think, embodies the network of organizations and communities and special interests within Prime and outside of Prime that go to, make up the larger responsible management education community, okay? So clearly, as scholars and academics, we do a lot of work related to the scholarly to our scholarly endeavors. And this slide just captures a lot of that. And I'd like to highlight just a couple of the things on there. The working group has sponsored a number of different research projects, including on the far left, the first Seaman Global Poverty Survey targeted toward faculty in 2008. But as you can see, there have been progressions in our interest in understanding things, including a 2011 global survey around challenges, opportunities, and solutions, which then led to another survey, but also in 2008, replicating that with students. One really interesting part that really captures who we are when you do a global survey is we had those surveys translated into a number of different languages because our members span the globe. We had those surveys in Arabic, Bulgarian, Chinese, English, French, German, Polish, Portuguese, Spanish, and Serbo-Croatian. This led to the early 2008 survey led to this article published in the JME, which outlines much of the history and goes into more detail with the survey findings. Okay. So as scholars, we're interested in understanding and supporting us as faculty. In a minute, Milenko will talk more about our book series. These first two were focused just on the issue of poverty, and then we broadened to expand to talk about the SDGs and to engage these broad issues in a more dynamic, I'd say, complete way. We've also sponsored conferences. Milenko will talk about the last column, RMER. I'd like to just talk about, briefly mention the first conference in 2014 in Nicaragua. This was a conference co-hosted by INCAE, one of the business schools in Costa Rica that had a campus in Nicaragua. We hear in the Prime community that experiential learning is crucial to engaging our students. This conference was taking that idea and doing that experiential firsthand learning with every delegate. So we literally walked the talk, and delegates were engaged in the same way that our students often are. I think one of our real, really amazing things that we've done is the broad scope of our commitment to students. We've mentored PhD students. On the IJME article, Britta Kronbach was a PhD student at the time who co-wrote that with us. Our working group has participated in every Prime Global Student Ambassador initiatives. We've had international essay contests. I'll look at the working group toolkit in a minute, and students have been subjects of our own research. Okay. So here I'd just like to highlight a scholarly article that one of our members and myself also recently published in the IJME. It really extended the work of Debbie Heskey-Lewenthal, who really has an interest in understanding student voice and student engagement. And what Jerry and I and the working group as leaders in this found was students think that poverty is a legitimate topic. However, when asked about it, we had them rank all 17 SDGs and their exposure, their opportunity to study them. Poverty was third to last. It came in at 15 out of 17 SDGs. Huge opportunity. We asked students in this, who do you think is responsible for alleviating poverty? Some stereotypic notions. Government was the highest, but really affirming and encouraging was over half said, 50% said businesses have a role to play, and myself as a business professional, I also have a role to play. Okay. One last finding from this was when the survey asked, which of the following voices most influences you in your understanding of poverty? The choices were my institution and their values, the values that businesses communicate in the wider community, employers' values when I talk with them, or faculty values. Faculty came up as the number one. Okay. Finally, I'd like to talk about the Anti-Poverty Toolkit, the first of its kind. Again, developed grassroots through one of our members, Tai Keong Tang, a political science professor at Radford. He developed a student team. They found 502 open sourced resources, so we didn't have to deal with copyright and things, and posted them, and created this lovely toolkit. Okay, the users, here are the users in our broad ecosystem: family, students, anyone really who is interested in the issue of poverty. And you can see the URL at the bottom. Okay. Right now, sitting where I am in Chicago in the United States, for me, sometimes the world might feel like this, or it does feel like this to me, but I'm heartened and I feel really committed to the working group and really to Prime because of this vision statement: to work on the issue of poverty alleviation until discussions of poverty are deeply embedded in all levels of management education worldwide. Then when that happens, we will disband. That statement is an echo of something that Muhammad Yunus and his interest in microfinance said. His commitment was, the idea behind microfinance was to give everyone opportunity and possibility, so that one day the only way we'll learn about poverty is in a museum. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to my good friend and co-chair leader of the working group, Milenko.
Thank you very much, Al, for this introduction and very comprehensive picture of what our working group has been doing. Before I say a few words about myself, I would like only to make a small correction.
Oh.
You said we met in 2008 in Belgrade, which is true. And then we launched this first survey, which is also true. But you omitted to mention that we wanted to do that already in 2006 when we met in Bled in Slovenia.
Mm-hmm.
But why I mentioned that? Because when we came up with a proposal very informally, there was an immediate negative reaction. What do you mean poverty and management education? It doesn't come into consideration. We are creating elite, business elite. They don't want to deal with poverty. That was the reaction. But then in 2007, when the principals for Responsible Management Education has been launched in Geneva under the auspices of Ban Ki-moon in the Global Leader Summit, Ban Ki-moon, Secretary General of the United Nations at the time, then the whole climate has changed. So that enabled us then to proceed with an idea that we somehow were too early to launch in 2006. That is very interesting, and it speaks also about the importance of Prime as a movement. I was involved in the very creation of the Prime, given the circumstances at the time. I was in Seaman Association, which was one of the co-founders of the initiative. And I remember after July 2007, we sent to New York about 30 applications of our members who were willing to join Prime Initiative. These 30 members came before Prime Secretariat was ready to process them because they had not produced yet the application form and so on. So this is just to say that I was there from the very beginning. I was involved also as discussion leader in the first series of global forums. I was also an alternate member on behalf of Seaman in the Prime board, and also member of the Prime advisory board. But as the founding and managing director of the International Management Teachers Academy from 2000, when it was established, until 2014, when I left, I was proud that that was not only one of the best, I mean, this is what people said, faculty development program in the world, but the only one who had a strong emphasis on social responsibility of faculty. So we had it as an important part of the 2-week program. And later on, we introduced also a disciplinary track on business in society, where faculty could learn how really to teach disciplines or courses that have this focus. Al has already, Al, can you put the next slide? He mentioned I would talk about the books, but through this short story, I would also like to further build on what Al already presented as the main features of the modus operandi of our working group. So one of them is communicate. You could have seen that we have very wide and deep communication with different entities within Prime and beyond. But our strong belief is you cannot collaborate without communication. So one of our slogans, not only slogans, but practice, is communicate in order to be able to collaborate. Frequently, when we receive messages from people who are interested in joining our working group, they ask us, what does the membership entail? What are the obligations and so on? And our response is very simple. No fees, no obligations. Membership in the working group is only a small privilege to get first informed about the current and future activities, projects of the working group, so that members can make a better informed decision on whether A, to join them, or B, preferably to initiate some new activities where working group can support them or include that proposal into the in pipeline portfolio of activities. So that was that is important, I think, to say. So now let me go back to the Global Forum, which was held in conjunction with the Rio Plus 20 conference in Brazil, in Rio de Janeiro, when Prime celebrated the first 5 years of its existence. In the forum, the then executive director of UN Global Compact, Georg Kell, expressed thanks for all those who contributed to the development of Prime in the first 5 years. And he mentioned specifically all working groups without mentioning our working group. And I was somehow surprised. I said, probably someone made a speech for him and made a mistake. And then he made the pause and he said, but particularly, I would like to thank Anti-Poverty Working Group for their phenomenal work. And then he asked us to stand up and to receive applause from the audience. Of course, that was flattering and we were proud, but I think what motivated him to say that was perhaps the title of the global survey that Al referred to previously. And the title was Fighting Poverty Through Management Education, Challenges, Opportunities, and Solutions. And this is another key feature of our working group. Whenever we address an issue, we try to explore it from the perspectives of what are the challenges faced in dealing with the issue, what are the solutions already provided, and then what are opportunities for the future. So this is how it works. In the same place in Rio, after this global forum, we had a lunch, and Carol, Al, and I sit together. We talked about the event, and then Carol said, why don't we edit or make a book, edited book on the issue of poverty? And we say, well, okay, yes. But then nothing moved. I mean, we accepted the idea, but it was somehow there to be dealt with sometime in the future. What happened in the meantime? In August, the same year, 2012, Academy of Management had its annual meeting in Boston, in the United States. And Sue O'Keefe from the United States, our working group member, asked Al and me, and also Jonas, who was at the time head of Prime Secretariat, to make a proposal for a PDW for the Academy of Management meeting, professional development workshop. And we did, and we submitted, and there was a silence for a while. And then we received a message from Sue, which contained the response from the program chair of the Academy of Management 2012. And it started that the program committee somehow thought our proposal does not fit PDW. That was the first part of the sentence. And when I read it, I said, oh, they rejected us. But then there was the second part of the sentence, which said, however, we believe it should be included into the program, but as an AAT. And AAT stands for All Academy Theme, which was in a hierarchy level higher importance than PDW. So we had this session there, which was so populated that it was a big room, you know, all seats were busy, but there were many people standing, you know. And following the event, John Peters, who was at the time in the management team of Greenleaf Publishing, he asked Al and me whether we could have a coffee or a beer. I don't remember. It was hot in August in Boston, anyhow, to discuss something. And we said, yes, sure. So we met there, and he said, I have a proposal for you to consider. And we said, what is the proposal? And he said, the proposal is to consider editing a book on poverty and management education. And you may be surprised when we heard that. That was flattering, and it was fantastic news. Our response was, we will consider it, but only if we have not one, but two books. And he said, why two books? We haven't had so far any book about poverty and management education. He said, well, we need two books. One would be on why to integrate poverty into management education, and the other would be on how to do that. So this was the first book, and I put for each book the titles of the chapters that were written by either our working group members or other people from UK and Ireland Prime chapter. That is not representative of the interest of the chapter, but it's certainly illustrative of what people in the chapter, some people thought could be of interest for such books. So the second book was how to integrate poverty into management education. And we also had one input from UK and Ireland chapter. Following this, we were contacted by anti-corruption working group, specifically Tai Keong Tan, who was mentioned earlier by Al for this anti-poverty toolkit project. And he wrote a message, look, our working group has published the first crime-related book. Your working group came as the second. Gender and Equality is the third that published. Why don't we try to join forces and work something on integrating sustainability into business and management practice? And we talked with Pat Flynn, who was at that time co-chair of the Gender Equality. We agreed, and we launched a proposal for book chapters for one book, integrating sustainability into business practice and management education. But we received quite a few proposals, high quality. Some of them were more focused on integrating sustainability into business and management, and the others were more focused on integrating the same thing into management education. And then we asked the publisher, Greenleaf, which at the time merged with Francis and Taylor Routledge, whether we can publish two books. They agreed. So the first one was integrating sustainability into business and management practice. And the second one was integrating sustainability into management education. Here again, we had three fantastic chapters by from UK and Ireland chapter, very intriguing one, focused on pedagogy, innovation, and so on. And we were proud of this book. And finally, after the success of this another mini series of two books, we since the SDGs were launched, then we thought of maybe making another mini series of two books. The first one on global champions of sustainable development, and the other one on struggles and successes in the pursuit of sustainable development. So these books also helped us to build on another feature of our modus operandi, which is mutual trust, respect, and friendship building through collaboration. And let me add another slide, which is a very good example of this. The lady, there are two charming ladies, but the one on the right is Yaprak Anadolu, who was at the time chair of the Middle East chapter. She asked us to help writing a book on financial literacy, and we joined the initiative, One of our members, Xi Liu from Hong Kong, was very active. And this book was presented at COP23 in Dubai, Financial Freedom for All, Maximizing Wealth with Minimal Means. So the message is creating, as you can see from their faces, creating friendship. They didn't know each other before, you know, they never met in person. Creating friendship through collaboration rather than looking for collaboration among friends, you know, and so on, which is also legitimate, but this is, I think, higher level, creating friendship through collaboration. Now, another example of this is our involvement in responsible management education research conference project, which is or was a joint project of two prime entities, DACH chapter, German-speaking chapter, Austria, Germany, and Switzerland, and anti-poverty working group. What is the origin of this project? In the inaugural meeting of the DACH chapter, held in January 2014, they launched the idea of organizing a research conference. But then they were not really sure how to proceed, you know, and they consulted Prime Secretariat, and Jonas told them, why don't you ask anti-poverty working group? They are collaborative, they can join you, and so on. And Lutz Schlange, who was the first chair of the DACH chapter, on the travel back from Innsbruck to Chur in Switzerland, where he is located, he made a phone call to me. He said, look, can we do together a conference? And I said, on behalf of the working group, of course, yes, sure, we can. And that was a great event in October 2014. And at the end, during the conference dinner, where participants expressed thanks to the organizer and organizers to participants and so on, everyone said it was a great event. And then I said, look, it was a really great event, but why to have only one? Because that was the idea, to have just one conference. Maybe we should explore options to have more of them, ideally as a regular series or a series of regular events. And it was accepted. And later on, we developed a model that 1 year, the conference would be held in the DACH chapter region. And the next year, then our working group will choose the host institution among the institution of its members, and our membership, as you heard from Ali, is rather global. So then we had a series of 11, and now the 12th event coming. So the different colors you see, the first one was with the DACH chapter as a lead co-organizer. The next one was the Prime working group. So we provided hosts in Egypt, in Cairo, in Curitiba, Brazil, in Jönköping, Sweden, in Suzhou, China. That was virtual, like the one in Chur in 2020. Then in Lisbon, and now it's our turn again to be the lead co-organizer, together with the Faculty of Organizational Sciences in Belgrade, in Serbia, to be held on 21st and 23rd of October. A few words about the format of the event. Well, I mentioned previously that one of the features of the event is a co-design process. Oh, can you go back to the previous slide, please? Yeah. So it was collaborative. I explained this collaboration. Now, the key feature, I would say, is talk the walk concept, because many conferences, as you know, end with the message, okay, we discussed everything, now let's go home and let's walk the talk. Here, our approach is let's talk the walk. Let us enable those who have already made their walk to present their work, receive feedback, and so on. The next feature is conference co-design process. When we start, we don't know how the conference will look like. We launch call for track proposals, and what we receive from the track proponents and later on from the authors, that defines the final content, and I would say also the spirit of the program. And last but not least, why is this flagship project under the quotation mark? Recently, we heard from PRIME Secretariat that RMER conferences are treated within PRIME movement and PRIME Secretariat as flagship projects. So these are not our words, but we are happy to quote someone else who said that. And last, if I can have next, we have parallel tracks defined by proponents. We have plenary session with keynote speakers, panels, roundtables, workshop meetings where we invite all PRIME entities, but also go beyond PRIME. So we invite other associations and organizations involved in the landscape of responsible management education to join us. And not always, sometimes we have poster sessions, and the conference results in various publications like special issues, of which one, Carol, was chief editor, books, and so on. So while thanking you for your attention, I would now give the floor to Carol.
Thank you, Milenko. I will try and be concise given the time, but I just want to say that my involvement with the well, first of all, a little bit about myself. If those of you who don't know me, I've been an academic in this field for 20 plus years. I had an early start in business, but my involvement with PRIME was from the very start, attending the first Global Forum, and then being one of the PRIME, if you pardon the pun, movers in setting up the chapter and being the chapter chair for PRIME, but also then a special advisor for chapters around the globe. When I was appointed in 2017 to that role, and awarded a PRIME Pioneer Award as well at that time. But in terms of my academic work, predominantly at Aston, which is where I started working with PRIME and the Anti-Poverty Group, and then in more recent times with Winchester, and I'm now an emeritus professor with Winchester. But I would say that for me, the Anti-Poverty Group started in a small room with about 8 of us, with Alan Milenko, talking about how we can write and design a global survey. And that was the survey that was presented at the Rio Plus 20 Earth Summit. And as Milenko has described, saw a kind of propulsion really of the working group with membership and sort of, getting traction with regard to that. For me, the abiding question that I've always had in my mind is, if we think that teaching about wealth creation and a capitalist system is the way to teach business and management, then how do we not teach about poverty when we know that the experience of the overwhelming majority of the world, that is their experience, and these very systems that we teach and perpetuate have been causing and maintaining that poverty? So for me, it was a moral, ethical question as well, very much of, why are we not educating students, and why are we not giving them the opportunity to be part of that? So I'd like to talk just briefly about my experience in the UK. As you saw, I was very much involved in editing the books and in the academic articles, and that was a pleasure. In fact, the first book about what is poverty had an award for original research. And I'm not saying that because, yes, we're very proud of that, but also it's because it wasn't done. People weren't writing about poverty, or, to some extent still not. So from a UK perspective, and Al mentioned about, we look at relative and absolute poverty, in the world, because people's notions of what poverty is sometimes strays to the continent of Africa or South America, and they don't look at it on their own doorstep. And so when we talk about poverty in the UK, there are some frightening, statistics, and I'll just put some of the last report. That was in January 2024 that was released, and that is a frightening set of figures about the number of people living in poverty, and it's actually now back to pre-pandemic levels. And in 20 years and 6 prime ministers, there has been no prolonged fall in the levels of poverty, and they were before that. And that kick-started in kind of like Thatcher era when inequality became more obvious. But children consistently have the highest levels of poverty. And what I want to talk about is we need to understand what poverty is and how it can be taught as a subject to make it real. And my work in times when I've been an active academic and in more recent times is working with those organisations. Can we have the next slide? So my interests and my activism is around social inclusion and what we can do to enhance that. About modern slavery, which also the victims of modern slavery tend to be the most vulnerable in our society. But importantly for myself and for all of us, and this is something I always talk to students about, is what is our sphere of influence, even within our own communities, to influence these things in a real sense, because it is a difficult subject to teach. And as has been mentioned, a lot of it's around experiential and practical issues, because you can't just stand in a lecture theatre and say, this is a picture of poverty and this is what poverty is. It's more about an emotional response as well by many of the students. You want to go on to the next slide? So some of the examples, I currently work with Fircroft College, and that's an adult residential college that is set around social justice and climate justice. And the students there are often the most vulnerable. About a quarter of them are from UK backgrounds and never really had a chance in education. And what I'm talking about is people that are headed towards poverty in adult life. And so giving them the education and the tools to be able to maybe gain higher qualifications. But importantly, we also work with the agencies and have courses for victims of modern slavery and refugees to help them become part of society within the college. And some of you in the UK will know the case of the cockle pickers in Morecambe Bay that was famously put in a film, Ghosts. When I was at Aston, we actually had the director of the film Ghosts. They were 20 Chinese people who died picking shellfish. And people thought they were trafficked into the country for that purpose. But no, and this is again the link with business, because I'm not sure how people teach modern slavery, but it's not just about what the law says, it's about what do businesses do and how do their procurement processes ensure that they are not encouraging slavery, because those people who died at that time that became quite well known had been in the country picking vegetables for Sainsbury's, one of the big supermarkets. They'd been trafficked by gangs around the country. Now, where I'm sitting in Birmingham, and one of the reasons the next link is, sorry, can you go back just to the Sandwell Free? That's an area near to where I live. But I could, cast around where I'm sitting, and there are estimated to be 14,000 people affected by modern slavery. And when we're talking about poverty, I'm just giving you this as an example of the things where you can talk about real issues that affect the vulnerable in our society. Now, when there are lots of websites I can refer you to, but things like Unseen, and they have a quiz about understanding it. They also have your slavery footprint and things which students get really engaged with, of understanding how business plays a role in perpetuating this. Do you want to go on to the next slide? So another project that I was involved in when I was at Aston was the City Council had an initiative after there'd been some real disturbances, particularly with young people. And it was called Giving Hope, Changing Lives, Birmingham's Social Inclusion Process. And I led the stream on inclusive economic growth and understanding what the role of business was, because these were young people predominantly who didn't think they had a stake in the society. And some of the initiatives, it was about, we talked about finding solutions, and some of that was working with the businesses to look at things like 10,000 opportunities that we launched. In the city, we have, these illustrious financial buildings, a bit like Canary Wharf, but not so grand. And we used to take groups of young people, and the businesses did, into those buildings and say, this could be for you if you really wanted it, because they thought that Birmingham was built around the car and there are main roads that cut off the centre. People, unless they have a car, couldn't actually get into the city. So I digress here, but my point is that when we're teaching management education, we need to find those real examples in the communities in which the students are, and they can see it. So we teach about global poverty, and we have lots of case studies, and we have lots of examples of that. It has to be through practical application, but also for the students to use their own sphere of influence in their communities, their experience, their families, their friends, how they look at this issue of poverty and what impact it has on them and their communities. Okay, do you want to go to the last slide? So I guess my punchline is that I see poverty as an academic subject, as something that should be fully integrated into the management curriculum in the way that we teach wealth creation. But I also think that there is a responsibility for activism alongside of that to encourage and ensure that students see their role, just as was mentioned earlier in the presentation, in alleviating this. Thank you.
Okay, so I think we've come to the end of the formal part of our overview of the working group, what we do, why we do it, and where we need to go. So I turn it back to Karen.
Thank you. Just incredibly informative. I've learned so much about the whole history of Prime Global, your leading role in the working groups, setting the path for others to follow, and the topic of poverty and what this means and how we all need to be doing more. So before I turn the recording off to enable a more relaxed discussion to take forward from here, if people want to sign up to your working group, what's the easiest way for them to do it?
Contact either Milenko or myself.
So to email you
Just
directly.
an email.
The email's last slide.
Yeah, we have our emails on the last slide, on the thank you slide.
Thank you. Okay, I will turn